This is Kate Baconsale. You're listening to Baconsale.
This episode is about an unsolved mystery. What you're about to hear is not a news broadcast. For every mystery, there is someone, somewhere, who knows the truth. Perhaps that someone is listening. Perhaps it's you. Ooh. Join us. Perhaps you may be able to help solve a mystery.
An unsolved mystery? Can't do the theme song. No, that's the Fletch theme song. What are you doing over there?
You just got to slow it down. It's creepy.
Ooh, yeah, set the tone. It's not even October, but I feel like it's almost got kind of a spooky, serious tone. Maybe. But welcome to Baconsale. I'm Joel.
I'm Kent.
And I'm Zack.
We'd like to thank you for listening to our last spooky, serious episode. ABBA!
Yay!
You can dance.
Give a huge change to this
Guys,
show.
I've had ABBA songs stuck in my head since we recorded that episode.
We hope everyone has.
I'm going to throw it out there. This is the most I've still had in my head after one of these types of episodes. Yeah. I didn't have the Queen songs in my head, the Rush, the Beach Boys songs.
So you try to purge it out, but ABBA, it's there forever.
Full confession, by the way, I think I like ABBA more now after doing that episode.
Really?
Yeah. Like before, I was fine.
Because you called them basically cotton candy before the show.
That's what I said. I said listening to them in pieces is fine, but it's like cotton candy.
Yeah.
When I was binge listening, it got really sickly sweet very quickly.
Right.
And there's not a lot of substance. But as we talked about it, as I studied it, as I still listened to them, I'm like, I think I appreciate them more because of Baconsale.
Maybe we should have waited like a week to do that show.
Maybe. If no one else got anything out of that show, I learned something. This was for me.
Well, there were some fun comments on the internet as well. Thank you for everyone who commented there. Honestly, we had some really great engagement
on Instagram even.
People commented on Instagram. I was so happy. But I'd like to say an older fox on Twitter said, that was perhaps the single best intro of Baconsale ever.
No, come on.
Nice.
I mean, it was really pretty good. Because here's the thing.
Right up there with the Muppets.
But it didn't fall apart as much as maybe the Muppets did.
Yeah.
I'm sure this was
I fell apart. I was laughing at the end of it.
Pretty legit, just saying. Now, I really like ABBA. Joel said that he started liking them more.
I'm learning to appreciate them.
I'm a fan.
Appreciates.
Yes.
I don't think any of us love ABBA as much as Andrew in the Dark loves Mamma Mia.
Mr. David Lynch?
Mr. David Lynch himself.
Okay.
He went on a full-blown social media campaign in support of Mamma Mia, specifically saying that he doesn't really even like ABBA. He says, I got a hot take on this. I hate ABBA, but I love the Mamma Mia soundtrack. Every time I try to listen to ABBA, I hate it. Oh, and I think Pierce Brosnan does an awesome job. But he also says on Instagram that, oh my goodness, I do love Mamma Mia. It's a perfect family night movie. At least it is in my family. We can all sing the songs without the music. If I had a little money as a reoccurring joke whenever we think about how we get out of a problem, and the cast is superb. I would name all the amazing people, but it would make this a very long post. Wow. So he moves on to Twitter, and he continues talking.
What?
Yes. He's very into Mamma Mia.
And David Lynch.
I support this.
Okay.
And then finally, Joel actually ended up retweeting this from the Baconsale account, but at Crew Dutler on Twitter says, great episode. I saw Mamma Mia on Broadway in 2005 as my introduction to ABBA. My girlfriend and I took the Chinatown bus from DC to NYC for the weekend. I recognized the songs, but I didn't realize it was ABBA. I didn't even know what the play was about, but my girlfriend wanted to see it. It was fun. And now that girlfriend is my wife, and I owe it all to ABBA. Not really due to ABBA, but she did take a chance on me.
Take a chance.
That's adorable.
It's a cute story. That's why we do this show, to bring out stories like that.
Thank you for sharing.
Speaking of sharing, I'd like to share some news with you guys.
Let's hear it.
What?
We have a new patron.
Woo-hoo. Why?
That's right. We have Dave Kelly.
Know, I said
Dave
wow.
Kelly.
Yeah. Hey,
Thank
Dave.
you.
You said why?
I said why?
Why would you support
I was going to
us?
say wow.
Yeah.
And I was going to say hey. And
you're
it just
why
came together.
are you a great guy, Dave
But
Kelly?
thank you, Dave Kelly, for
Kelly.
being an I Am the Listener patron.
Whoa.
That means he gets access to the Bacon Bits that we do. He gets some merch.
Awesome.
And he gets to sponsor an episode as well.
Very cool.
And we're going to read his name.
Yeah, at the end of each show.
At the end of every
We'll do
show.
a little show there. So we also, speaking of sponsoring a show, we have a guest here today. Jake's here.
Hey,
Jake
welcome.
the Cooler King Swallow.
Jake the Cooler King Swallow. Not Jacob Rogers. It's Jake Cooler King Swallow. Every time we say Jake, we keep being like, yo, Jake? No, not Jake. Jake.
You would have got, hey, guys.
Hey,
really,
guys.
really excited about the
Hey,
show
guys.
today.
Hey, one thing I've always had is if there's two Jakes in a room, I'm always Juice. That's what you
Juice.
call me.
Juice.
Wait, that's what you call me. It's a role I've ever had.
Juice?
Yep. So if there's
Okay.
two Jakes in a room, my name's Juice.
making a
Two
note.
Jakes in a room. That's a good band name.
Yeah.
So if I accidentally call you Juice on purpose,
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll still respond.
But Juice, we have you here today. Why don't you introduce yourself to the listener out there?
Yeah, so I'm Jake the Cooler Clean Swallow, as many of you have listened over the last few months.
I'll people fast forward to that part.
So, yeah, married, got 2 kids.
Yeah.
And we go back.
We do.
We went to
Yeah.
high school together, and we actually went on an LDS mission together in Portugal.
Yep.
Served together there. Never in the same area, we don't think. But
No, it was all around in the same area.
Yeah.
So when did you discover Baconsale then?
Joel started posting stuff on Facebook.
I did.
Of course, we were friends, and then so it was like,
Did
I
he
wonder what
remember
this
you
is.
at all? Okay, just checking.
Maybe.
Inside jokes on Baconsale.
So yeah, so I got onto that, and it was kind of off and on type thing, and then it wasn't until probably last September that I was like, oh hey, I need to find a different type of podcast to listen to, and
We're kind of
we go.
family friendly.
oh yeah,
We talk about fruit sometimes.
we do.
yeah. Me and my wife will listen to it on our way to Vegas anytime we
cool.
we go down there for vacation. So lots
Nice.
of time to kill. But,
Yeah.
you know.
And the kids, they're very young, but if you start listening, having them listen to it now,
Oh, yeah.
they'll love it when they're older.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah. That's the
yeah.
plan.
Yeah, so it makes it really fun. So yeah.
Well, we thank you for being here,
Yeah.
and thank you for being a patron as well. We really do appreciate it. And we have here some questions for you.
questions.
The versus questions.
see
we have
which
for
ones I
every
can do.
guest.
Now, you've been friends with Joel for a while,
Yeah.
right? But
I will be honest. I'd probably swing more Joel's way, but yeah, there might be
he's
a
cute
few
and all.
surprises.
He's cute and all.
We go back. We have basically the same upbringing a year apart. So
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, we have 11 questions here. We're going to throw them at you as fast as possible. Want fast answers. Either you don't have a strong opinion, just make a choice to make one of us angry. It's a lot of fun for everybody.
I feel like I'm going to be angry.
Are you ready?
Yep, let's go.
Let's go. Which is better, Karate Kid or Karate Kid 2?
Karate Kid,
Nice. Which is worse, Star Wars Episode 1 or Episode 2?
Episode 2,
Wow.
Do you rate movies using stars or letter grades?
stars.
Oh, me. Which is the more America movie, Rocky 4 or Independence Day?
Independence Day.
Juice!
Is Nightmare Before Christmas a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie?
It's a Halloween movie.
Okay, I'll take that one.
Okay. Buffy or X-Files?
X-Files.
Okay. Lord of the Rings or Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Okay.
But why?
Which is more Christmassy, Die Hard or Lethal Weapon?
Die Hard.
Okay.
Just people don't know.
He knows.
Phantom of the Opera or Les Mis?
Phantom.
Okay. Labyrinth or Never-Ending Story?
Never-ending story.
Okay.
And How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days or 10 Things I Hate About You?
10 Things I Hate About You.
Okay, I got a few wins.
You did.
Yep,
I'm
you
okay
did.
with that.
So it wasn't complete
Look.
in Joel's favor.
I know you just started listening last year, but if you listen a little bit more, your cynical side will grow.
Yeah.
And you'll side with me a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's not
so
how it
welcome.
Probably right.
That's not how any of this
It
works.
kind of happens that way, though.
Thank you for being here again. But that's not what we're talking about today, Jake. What are we talking about today, Zach?
I don't know if anyone knows what we're talking about.
Because it's a mystery?
It's a mystery.
All right.
People may know what we're talking about, but they don't know the answer.
Does anybody really know? No, we're talking today about a very mysterious figure known as D.B. Cooper.
Now, full disclaimer right here at the beginning, there are other better podcasts about D.B. Cooper. Like people that go super in depth and, dig up all the details.
No. There are other podcasts. Better?
They dedicate their entire podcast to this and have dug into every single detail.
Weirdos.
We're not doing
We're going to
that.
cover it all in one episode.
What, are you calling me a weirdo?
Wait.
Okay, I'll take
New
it.
best friend?
Are we doing a true crime show?
Kind of.
Yes, it is true.
And if you
crime.
don't know the story of
For
D.B. Cooper,
years.
it's fascinating. I will say that this is a fascinating
It's
story.
a rabbit hole type
It
show.
pulled
It can
me
be.
in when I first heard about it, and I was just totally involved with it for a while there. And, I was going to ask Jake, out of all the subjects you could have picked from, pop culture or otherwise, why did you pick D.B. Cooper?
And you've listened to Baconsale, right?
Yeah. Nice. No, DB Cooper's always fascinated me because you have this guy who disappears and nobody ever sees him.
Hijacks
again.
an airplane and
Hijacks
disappears.
an airplane and just disappears. So, I mean, without a trace, there's like nothing.
There's something.
Well, there is something, but I
But
mean,
not-
for
it
the
didn't
overall
help
thing,
matters. It just confused stuff,
exactly.
yeah.
It makes it very difficult to figure out, where he came from, why he did it, even what his intentions were.
It
Yeah.
feels like one of America's grand mysteries, right? The second shooter, Roswell, and D.B.
But
Cooper.
even those are kind of conspiracy theory type things. It's like, there may have not been
Yeah,
another
and this was a
shooter.
crime that the FBI cannot
But there is
solve.
solid evidence that this thing happened, obviously.
Yes.
It's an actual event, but it's just what happened after. No one knows. So
Leave it open.
how did you get involved with the story of D.B. Cooper?
So, those late nights when you're a kid and you got Unsolved Mysteries that comes on. That was the first,
it was actually on Unsolved Mysteries?
Yeah, it was
the TV
Unsolved
show
Mysteries.
Unsolved
Yeah,
Mysteries.
the TV with
Yeah.
Robert Stack. Yeah. So, saw that and went, wow, what happened to this dude?
Yeah. Robert Stack or DB Cooper?
Both.
What if they're
Because
the
obviously-
same person?
Oh, he's reporting on
The age
himself.
works.
Yeah, they look a little different.
They do. They do.
But anyway, so that's where the fascination started was in unsolved mysteries. And so anytime a new documentary comes out or new information or that type of thing, I just like to latch onto it. You wouldn't call me a Cooperite. Like there's a lot of Cooperites.
You don't go to
There's a
you don't go to
group.
CooperCon?
Nope, I don't. But
There's
they
a
do.
CooperCon.
They do
There's a
have one.
CooperCon.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
CooperCon, yeah.
But I haven't gotten to that point. But I don't know if I'll ever get to that point because
So
I
is
like
this-
the allure of the whole.
Are you saying you're a
idea.
sane person who does things in moderation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are there other big mysteries that you follow as well, or is this the prime one?
It's probably the prime one. I like to dabble in some of the other stuff, like maybe Roswell
Okay.
or
Sasquatch
or
or something.
Sasquatch, or
Sure.
It's
Loch
fun.
Ness Monster. There's a lot of other smaller ones too. Like
Yeah.
what was the one? Joe the Goat? No, wasn't Joe the Goat.
Joe the Goat. You mean the mongoose?
Oh, Mongoose. That's what it was.
Jeff?
It's
Talking
Jeff,
about-
the talking mongoose.
Joe the Goat, Jeff the
Yeah.
Mongoose, whatever.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too because like DB Cooper is one of those things you've probably ran across, and if you haven't dug in, you didn't notice what the reference was. But it's all over the place.
I would say most recently, and maybe the only reason people know of the name or reference is it was shown in the Loki series just
Yeah.
this past year,
Where Loki
for
was-
about 3 minutes.
Yeah, where
Yeah.
Loki was kind of.
Yep.
It's like, oh, Loki was DB
It
Cooper.
was really well done too. Considering
it was a
Yeah.
fun little shout out there
Yeah.
that I went, oh, I know what they're going to do here. This is fun.
Yeah.
But I mean, just for reference, my kids are going to know the name DB Cooper, not because of the story, but because when we got a robot vacuum, little robot vacuums that go across the
Yeah.
floor, it was a D-bot. And so we started calling DB. And then I, of course, called it DB Cooper. And so my kids to this day will call the vacuum DB Cooper. I don't know
Love
if
it.
the younger ones have any concept of what that means,
Sure.
but I have talked to the older ones about it. And like I said, when I first heard about the story, it completely fascinated me. This is probably, I want to say like maybe 12, 13, 15 years ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so cool. And then Kent and I don't know if I could say this. Maybe I can't.
Yeah, we'll
but
see.
we worked with someone, and we were having a conversation about DB Cooper, and this person, this coworker we worked with went, oh, I know something about that. And they began to tell us a story of why they thought this family friend of theirs was DB Cooper. And she had all this evidence that
Yeah.
she was throwing our way and all these details. And I was like, that is so cool if that's true.
I think
But is
that
it
we were
true?
sworn to secrecy,
That's why I can't mention
pain
her
of
name.
death or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't
we
know.
can't mention her name.
Yeah.
She promised
She worked
us
for
we
the
wouldn't mention
CIA,
her.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
Hey, I know you guys are sworn to secrecy, but could you guys talk about it on a podcast anyway?
We didn't
It's actually on our
any
pick a bit,
names.
so
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
subscribe.
We didn't mention April's name at all. But Ken, what about you? DB Cooper background. Do you have any?
Yeah, just in pop culture references. I've seen like a short documentary about it before, but it wasn't until doing this research that I truly was fascinated with the story and wanted to solve it myself.
That is called the Cooper Vortex.
Yeah.
If people do that when they start investigating this story, they get pulled in, and you just start
Because it seems like everyone should be able to solve this, right? You have enough information, like any true crime episode, you're like, oh yeah, that's easy.
and literally all
But
the
it's
all the
not.
documented files from the FBI have been released to the public. You can dig in online and read everything.
And they're
they have.
still releasing files every month. They'll release files because of the Freedom of Information Act.
they're doing
So-
they're metering it.
But why do people care? I mean, let's talk about the story. Why does what happened in 1971, why does this matter now?
It's because it's an unsolved mystery, but no one got hurt. Like, this isn't some grisly murder story. This is the story
Yeah.
of a guy who got some money, bailed off an airplane, and disappeared.
At the point where even though he committed a crime, he's like Robin Hood. Like we see him as an American legend.
Some people do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some people do.
Yeah. But
Yeah. Well, he never gave the money to the poor, as far as we know.
we don't know what he did with the money. And Zach, I was going to say, you don't have a understanding of, really, when we start talking about this, you're like, I don't know what this story is.
I have no concept.
So did you do any research for the show, or are you going to enjoy it with us here on the thing?
I decided to come to Baconsale and be a listener.
Nice.
Kind of
Yeah.
fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's get into it then, shall we?
You'll hear me go, wait, what?
Yeah, then Zach's going to get sucked into the Cooper
So,
Vortex.
Juice, we're going to have you lead the conversation. But Joel and I are going to interrupt because that's Baconsale.
Yes.
So
Yeah. It's all good. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Hey, so this starts Thanksgiving Eve, November 24th,
families in town, it's the
1971.
worst.
Yeah.
Airport's crowded.
Busy
Everybody
day.
wants to get home. Everyone wants to get home. So we have this middle-aged man that walks into Portland Airport and buys a ticket for $20. $20 ticket. That in and of itself is
Right.
That's the unsolved mystery right
Yeah,
there.
right
Why
there.
are ticket prices so expensive
$20,
now?
right? But what's so great about this is if you ever go to the airport and you're going through security and you just hate it, it's because of DB Cooper. Ever since this happened, your life is probably...
That's when they started bringing in metal detectors
Yeah.
and started searching bags because of DB Cooper. And I mean, okay, we should flash back a little bit before. There were a bunch of hijackings like happening in the late 60s, early 70s of people taking the planes to Cuba and things like that. This was one, however, when it was just kind of didn't fit that MO. It was a completely different type of hijacking. But because of what he did, airports had to be like, okay, we got to do something about this.
Yeah. So he buys a ticket, okay?
On
And
Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305.
on his ticket, it is actually written Dan Cooper, not DB Cooper.
Yes. There was an error in the reporting after he disappeared. There was a suspect named DB Cooper in Oregon that they were like, oh, maybe this guy has a criminal
Not
record.
even a suspect, just some guy
Well,
named.
He had a
DB
criminal
Cooper.
record.
He had a
So
criminal
that's why
record.
they
Like,
looked
maybe it's
into
him.
him.
And they went, no, it's not him.
Yeah.
But then the local reporter put out the name DB Cooper, and then the person who was doing the worldwide news
It sounds
put out the name
mysterious.
DB Cooper.
Yeah.
It does, because Dan Cooper,
Yeah.
that could be your neighbor. But DB Cooper, what does the DB stand for?
That in of itself is just brings it right home. It makes him seem like he's a bad...
A bad A.
Yeah,
as
there we
say
go.
here,
Okay,
it's
bad
family
A.
friendly,
Okay, yeah. DB Cooper, bad A. Let's just put it that way.
Dan Cooper, he's mowing the lawn.
Yeah, it's your uncle, right?
Yeah.
Which very well could be.
But could you describe Dan Cooper to us, or DB? We're going to call him DB
Yeah,
Cooper.
yeah.
So describe what he looks like.
Witnesses define him as a middle-aged man, mid-40s, about 6 foot, 180. He wore
6 foot? I thought I had 5'10" over here.
it varies.
Well, like every
Some
dating
people
app,
say 6 foot.
you claim
So-
6 foot. You're actually just 5'10".
you were going to say
His license probably said 6 foot.
Probably, yeah.
It's like
His Tinder profile back in 1971.
did he wear the sunglasses in the Tinder profile? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. So anyway, so I mean, he's just a normal, average-looking
He really
gentleman
is.
for the 70s.
He
right?
seems to fit the profile of basically every podcast.
Yeah.
That's okay, guys. I'm
180.
I'm
He's
DB Cooper.
180 pounds, Zach.
Oh, just kidding.
Oh, geez, good for him. But and then they said he has swarthy skin, which I was
Yeah.
like, no one uses that term anymore. What does that mean?
That's
Swarthy.
a very
It's
70s.
It's a darker skin.
Yeah.
But we're talking wearing a suit,
Yes.
Yeah.
at sunglasses,
White
dark
shirt,
suit.
Yeah.
thin
White
tie.
suit tie.
Yeah,
and,
loafers.
They said close set brown eyes. Like they have a sketch out there. If you go and look, like if you look up DB Cooper, you're going to see the famous sketch of him
Yeah.
wearing the sunglasses or not wearing the sunglasses and the suit and tie.
There's even some sketches of him aged.
Yeah.
So they can, if you happen to see him as you're walking around,
Yeah.
you
So
know
anyway,
what
he's,
to look for.
he's on flight 305
Yep.
from Seattle to Portland.
Portland to Seattle.
Portland to Seattle. Excuse
Yep.
me. Yes.
It's a 30-minute flight.
30-minute flight, and so it's not long.
Not at all.
But as soon as he gets on, he orders a drink,
A bourbon.
and soda.
Yeah, and even though the airport was busy, this is the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
They said the plane was only about 1/3 full.
Yeah. And this is in the afternoon, so this isn't at night, at least not yet. Anyways,
Not yet.
So as they're taxiing off the runway, he hands a note to the stewardess.
Yes, Florence Schaffner.
Exactly. And she thought he was just handing her a note that had his phone number on
So-
it. So Tinder profile right there,
it's
right?
it's the 70s or all time, and men are gross. And so they see flight attendants, and they're like, "Hey, I'm going to be really chauvinistic, and I'm going to give her a note with my phone number, or
Yeah.
say something nasty." So she just put it in her purse, right?
Yep.
Didn't even look at it.
Yep.
And then he leaned toward her
sees
and
that.
said, "Miss, you better look at that note. I have a bomb."
Crazy.
Yeah. So obviously she's freaked out, right? So she goes and sits down next to him, and she asks actually to see the bomb. And he opens up the case, and she...
Curiosity. I don't know.
I was trying to think, if I were in her position, what would I do?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'd ask to see the
Yeah,
bomb.
if somebody slides me a note and like, hey, I'm going to blow you up, and I'm like, prove it.
Well, and from all accounts, he's nothing but nice and polite.
Cordial, yep.
Even though he's saying these things like, "I have a bomb," he's like, "Excuse me, miss, you might want to sit down. I have a bomb."
But also the bomb he showed her, real or not, we don't know,
Yeah.
looked like an Acme bomb from Looney Tunes, right?
They said
Yeah,
it was
probably
8 red cylinders and
Yes.
2 rows of 4 with some wires attached.
She
to them.
assumed it was dynamite.
Yeah,
It had the
yeah.
appearance of dynamite. Who knows? It could have been road flares
Yeah.
for all we know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
By the way, the note he gave her, we don't have because he took it back later on.
he did take it back.
I was like,
Yeah.
why aren't they analyzing the note, or why can't we see the note when I was looking around? But it's gone.
The way I'm picturing him going into all this, it was afternoon. It was this exact flight, obviously. Having the bomb, everything was planned. And he was just super calm and collected about the whole thing.
Yeah, drinking his bourbon and soda,
Right.
smoking some cigarettes.
Yeah.
It was the 70s.
No big deal.
So
Well,
then,
and
Go ahead.
not to stop you. Bourbon and soda was actually kind of the drink for socialites at this time.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, drink bourbon, especially on a flight, because most of the time people would dress up as they get on a flight.
Yeah,
Nowadays, everyone's just comfortable.
It's the same.
They're in PJs, they're
Sure.
in
Flip-flops.
slippers, whatever.
I've seen people without their shirts on flights lately.
Yeah.
What?
So
Yeah.
but so
What?
this is a very socialite thing. I mean, he's very polished. He's very educated, just by the way he talks, by the way he speaks, that type of thing. So it's very interesting that a man who's this.
Proper? I
yeah.
mean, is a criminal?
Yeah. I mean, you would think it would be somebody who's
Well, a lot of these
maybe
desperate,
putting a
right?
gun to the pilot's head.
a lot of these
and gonna do something
hijackers
like
from
that.
before, they would be loud and boisterous and demanding, like with guns saying, take me to Cuba.
Yeah.
And that was a huge thing. It was like, these flights to Cuba. But he was just polite and calm.
Yeah.
And so she has to see the mom. He opens it up, and then he closes his briefcase and makes his demands, which were Jake.
So most hijackers are like Dumbledore from the book. Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire?
Yes.
No, DB Cooper.
DB
is
Cooper's
the-
like that,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
DB Cooper is Richard Harris.
And most of them are like,
Yeah.
okay.
You're not
Michael
supposed to
Gambon.
yell at me.
Okay.
Not this adaptation.
Got it.
We brought it back to Harry Potter.
I miss
We're
Richard
good.
Harris.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
We're
DB
on it, we're on
Cooper's
it.
chill.
Yep.
Most hijackers, not so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But then he makes his demands.
Yeah. So he sends a note through the stewardess to the pilots. Okay, this is what I want: 4 parachutes, $200,000. And what's interesting, he says negotiable American currency, which is interesting because
What American says American currency?
exactly.
Except for the fact that this is like password. Like he said it to the flight attendant said it to the pilots. The pilot relayed
Right.
it to the
It's
people.
all eyewitness accounts
Yeah.
because we
So-
don't have the note. Right.
By the way, and $200,000 back in 1971 is equivalent to $1.3 million in 2020.
but also,
That's a lot of dollars.
once again, what American doesn't say, I want 200,000 cash.
yeah.
Right? I need a
well,
negotiable
he did
American
say, I think
currency.
he did say like something about non-marked bills or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So 4 parachutes, $200,000.
And the 4 parachutes were basically so his plan couldn't be foiled. Because if he asked for 1 parachute, they could give him the 1 parachute, but it would be a fake parachute. They basically drop to your death.
If he asked for 4,
But-
they don't know which one he's going to use and if he's going to take a
hostages.
hostage, and so they're not going to take that chance.
So he's
Yeah.
covered.
Yeah.
He also asks for a fuel truck to be standing by in Seattle so they can refuel. So that's his demands. That's all he wanted. That's all he wanted. You know?
And another interesting thing is she relays that to the cockpit so that they have to radio it back to
Yeah.
The flight tower.
the flight tower so they can inform the local law enforcement and the FBI. So as she does that, she comes back and now he's wearing a pair of sunglasses.
Yeah, so she saw
Which
his
is
eyes before
cool
then.
to do on an airplane.
Yeah.
Wait.
Hold on. He wears sunglasses.
That's his slogan.
Yeah. I mean, who wears a pair of sunglasses in an airplane, right? I mean,
Well, back then,
I
it was the
imagine maybe,
70s.
you
I
know.
feel like that's a theme now. It was the 70s.
it's like my wife says, if I wear sunglasses inside, the sun never sets on a cool guy.
That's it. Exactly.
Future's so bright, you got to wear shades.
Exactly.
Crap, I got to start wearing sunglasses.
You really do.
So then they said they contacted the Northwest Orient's company, and the
the
president
CEO.
said,
Yep,
he
president.
said, okay, we will pay that ransom. And they decided to get it all ready in Seattle.
Now imagine being another passenger on this flight, right? There were 35 other passengers. No one was panicked about this because no one knew about it. They said
Exactly,
there
yeah.
was minor mechanical difficulty. We're going to need to make a stop, but no one can get out
But
quite
then they
yet.
circled Puget Sound for about 2 hours. This was supposed to be a half-hour flight.
Right.
That would have been very uncomfortable had it not been the 70s and they could all get really drunk and really smoky.
And while they're circling, DB Cooper says to the flight attendant, hey, that looks like Tacoma down there.
Yeah, he recognized
He
Tacoma.
recognized Tacoma
from the air.
From the air when it's starting to become dark.
Yeah.
So he's obviously somebody who's been in this area. He knows the area.
Right.
He knows what's down from the air. I mean, a lot of people can see it from.
I
the
have a hard
ground,
time-
but
Yeah, we have
from
those
the air.
Delta maps that says you're kind of here. You're
Yeah.
over the ocean. Please don't die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like
Yeah.
even when I'm flying into home, I'm like, oh, there's some mountains there. Maybe that's no, okay, there's the Salt Lake Temple. I know where we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently, it's cringy to say, there's my house.
Is
Or
it?
like, I know where we are. Apparently,
Wait, who do you say this to? That's the question.
apparently, you're not allowed to say that on an airplane. That's a real
Like
boom-
out loud to everyone on the
yeah,
plane.
It's like a boomer thing to do.
I can see my house.
Oh, look, down there. I
It's
know
so
where we
fun,
are.
though.
It sounds like that.
Yeah. Oh, look, I know where we are.
Yeah. And as they're waiting to land, he actually orders a second bourbon and soda, and he pays his drink tab, and even says to Tina Mucklow, another flight attendant, he asked her to keep the change. Like, this is not a guy that's being rude and
Yeah, what
and
criminal
condescending.
pays the tab?
Is he like,
Yeah.
this is like a shaken, not stirred kind of guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Also, he reassured her. she started to break down a little bit, and he reassured her. So this isn't your typical garden variety type,
No.
quote unquote, terrorist, right?
Yeah.
Well, and she says, "Do you have a grudge against the airline?" And he replied, "I don't have a grudge against your airline, miss. I just have a grudge."
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay.
No, who knows?
Oh, no.
Maybe he did have a grudge against the airline. Maybe it was a grudge against the federal government.
Sure.
Maybe it was just, hey, I want to stick it to the man.
Yeah.
But the FBI gets the money ready. They get 10,000 unmarked $20 bills. The serial numbers start with the letter L, and they actually microfilmed each one of these $10,000 bills. So they have record of all the money they gave him.
So they just scanned
Yeah.
every single one.
And so then they were going to give him some like professional military parachutes, and he said, no, I want 4 civilian parachutes.
Yeah.
And they got him from a local skydiving school. And he ended up, well, I mean, we know he jumped out of the plane. That's not a spoiler. That's going to happen here in a sec.
Are they packed by students?
Well, they're just,
I need students.
they don't automatically open like the military one. It's like you have to manually pull the ripcord.
Yeah, so like
Yeah.
a lot of the paratroopers, like especially World War II, they would hook on to a line, and then as soon as they jumped out, the chute would open. These ones, you actually have to clear the plane that he wanted, pull the ripcord, and then it would open.
And something interesting, though, is that he chose the older of the 2 primary parachutes that were given there. He selected one that was kind of for classes. It was kind of a dummy one where the main chute would open, but like the reserve chute was actually sewn shut. So it's like he knew how to parachute, but maybe didn't know everything about parachuting. Like he wasn't great at it. He wasn't
a risk.
professional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like people say, "Oh yeah, he was a professional paratrooper," and it's like, or was he? Did he just know kind of basics of it, but didn't know how to look for a dummy parachute?
Yeah, yeah.
So basically, they're on the runway at this point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
And
they
he actually tells the pilot to go to a really lit part of the runway.
Because they land in Seattle.
Exactly.
Yeah, they've landed in Seattle. They left Portland. They landed in Seattle. Well lit part of the runway, and then he has them close all the curtains.
Yep.
So they can't snipe him.
Yep. Don't want any police snipers, which is interesting because most people, if you're in that type of situation, you're probably not thinking, hey, close all the windows so
Right.
I don't get sniped, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this guy has thought this through.
Totally.
Yeah.
He's thought this through. This isn't something he just woke up one day and went, I think
try
I'm
this
going to,
out.
yeah, see
Yeah.
what
I need
happens.
exactly
Right.
$200,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So he's thought this out. So, anyways, once he gets all the ransom money and they're trying to fuel the trucks, which is interesting because it takes them 3 times before they actually are when they start or when they finish fueling the airplane.
He seemed to know how much longer it was supposed to take,
Exactly.
and then he got bugged that it took longer than it was supposed
he
to.
He says, "Why does this taking so long?" So
Yeah.
obviously he knows.
Yeah, they're stalling.
Yeah,
Something about
He's
refueling
trying to
the plane.
figure out. He's like, okay, we need to get out of here. I'm not sitting on the ground anymore. So, but anyways, once he gets all his demands met, then he releases the passengers.
All
and just
passengers,
like
yeah.
what Kent was saying, they didn't know anything really was going on.
Right.
A lot of them even said in their testimony and they're like, I didn't know this
Yeah.
was happening until they pulled us off the
Reporters
plane.
like crowd him when they come off the plane. They're like, What's happening?"
Yeah, I actually wonder if they actually expected to get the passengers that early because a lot of people who do hijackings, like they're just horrible people and will keep the passengers for longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. He did, however, keep some people on the plane.
Sure.
Except a couple of the pilots.
Enough people to fly the
A
plane.
flight attendant.
Yes.
And that was basically it.
Yeah, and him. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, he stayed on the plane. And then he says, "Take me to Mexico City."
So they go to take off, right? And obviously, he says, let's go to Mexico City. Well, what he does is he asks the pilot to, as they take off, make the flaps 15 degrees. You got to keep your airspeed at a certain...
At 100 knots.
Yep, 100 knots or I think it's
115 miles per hour. Yeah.
And also keep it at 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
And depressurize the cabin.
Sounds like he knows a lot about planes.
Yeah, that's kind
Or
of
at least
what it
knows
is.
how to not die.
Yeah. Or what's the safest way to jump out, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we know he's not going to Mexico City.
No.
Yeah.
But the pilots tell him, hey, we don't have enough fuel. We're not going to get to Mexico City. So we got to make a stop somewhere. And so they agree upon Reno Tahoe Airport.
Yeah.
And as they're taking off, taking off, they're discussing about this. They get to a certain point where DB Cooper's like, okay, the stewardess, Mucklow, I need you to go into the cabin and stay, or in
Up
the
at the
cockpit,
cockpit, yeah.
and stay there with the pilots.
Now it's interesting, and I wonder if he knew about this. He had to have, with all of his expertise. It sounds like they're being tailed.
Yeah. They've
Yeah.
got 2 F-106 fighter aircrafts following this plane. One above it and one below out of the view. So he knew at least one, he should have known at least one plane was following him.
Which is interesting. Yeah, you would think he would see it.
Yeah.
But-
But here's the thing. You'd think they see something too. But
Yeah.
those fighter pilots did nothing. They saw nothing. But it was also dark and stormy. By
we're
this
getting
point.
there.
Yeah. So what's interesting about those pilots, though, is the plane is going so slow that those fighter pilots can't stay with the plane because the plane is going so slow. So they have to continue to come back around.
do
He knew
circles.
what he was doing.
Yeah,
Okay.
he knew exactly what he's doing. So they continually have to come back around and look at the plane, and then go up forward, and then come back around. But anyway, so she goes into the cockpit, and as she looks back, she sees DB grabbing one of the parachutes and actually cutting the paracord on one of the parachutes,
Which is the ropes that go up to like the parachute. From the
Exactly.
harness to the parachute, it's the ropes up there.
Yeah, and he starts to put stuff around his waist. We assume it's probably the money.
Yeah, he's
Right.
probably securing it.
Because
Because
what
it's
hap-
20 pounds.
Yeah, it's about
Yes.
20 pounds. And what's interesting about that is they didn't give him a knapsack full of money. They just gave him like a white bag. It doesn't even have handles. It's not even closed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he didn't get the knapsack he asked for. So he was already kind of...
He's got a bug. Like,
perturbed.
I got to
Yeah.
cut the cords
Yeah.
now.
So now he's got to figure out how to attach this to him as he jumps. Because obviously
Right.
he doesn't want to lose the money because that's why he's there.
Yeah.
So,
Then at approximately 8 p.m., they get like an alarm, a notice that the aft air stair apparatus had been activated. Meaning, on this plane, the way it was designed, there's like a rear staircase that comes right out of the tail, just kind of lowers down. And they got a kind of a notice saying, "Oh, that's open." And then they get on the intercom and say, "Hey, do you need any help?" And all he says is, "No."
And that's it.
Yep.
Last thing he said.
last thing we ever hear of DB Cooper, at least anything said. Anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
So, which is interesting. Those aft stairs, that's how the passengers get on and off the airplane. It's not something off to the side like nowadays.
Well, because if this would have been a plane where there was a door on the side and he jumped out, that would have been probably bad because one of the turbines could have got him.
Yeah.
Is it just like the movies when there's like you open a door on the side, everyone gets sucked out?
Well, no, because he didn't.
that's what I
Remember, he
was
said,
picturing.
"Don't pressurize the
the
cabin."
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he, like you said, he knows what he's doing. And this specific plane has that aft stairs because there's only a couple planes that actually do this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like you said, if you jump off the side, you're going to fall right into the
Turbines.
engines.
Yeah.
So these engines are high enough. So if he jumps out, he's not going to.
So he picked a 727 specifically because of how it was designed.
Yep. Exactly.
Once again, he probably knew something about planes.
Oh yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, so like you said, at 8:10 p.m., they get that warning light. It goes down. All of a sudden, what they call a pressure jump or bump, and it pops up. The back of the tailplane pops up, and they are like, "Hey, what's going on here?
Sure.
What's going on?" So by the time they figure it out, they're probably already on their descent down into Reno, and they figured that he probably had jumped, but they weren't sure.
Yeah,
Because
he
they-
asked for parachute. The stairs open the back. You got to know something's going on.
Yeah.
They said they felt like the air pressure changed, like their ears popped.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I find interesting: the aft light, where the light flashed in the cockpit at 8 p.m. and then at 8:13 is when they had that sudden upward movement on the tail. And so I'm like, was he just kind of pumping himself up for 13 minutes? Like, okay, Dan, you can do this. Why are they calling me DB? I don't know, but Dan, you can do this.
Yeah, which is interesting because probably what happened is that bump is actually him jumping off,
Yeah.
and then that stairwell actually popping up and hitting the plane and
Yeah.
then coming back down. So,
Yeah.
So obviously they know something happened. He did something with the stairs, and I don't think they quite know that he actually quote unquote jumped yet. But then they taxi into Reno, of
Which
course.
I hated Wikipedia, which it is the source of knowledge and truth. But it says, like, at some point between 10 o'clock and 11:30 p.m., the 727 landed. I'm
I
like,
know.
you got everything down to the minute except for the
Honestly.
landing in the airport? That's a big time gap. That's an hour and a half.
Yeah. So they land at Reno, and as far as the law enforcement and FBI are concerned, they still think he's on the plane.
Yeah.
They think
because the jets did not see anyone jump off the plane.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's dark, it's
Right.
stormy.
Yeah.
I mean, the chances of seeing a guy in a
That's one
black
thing
suit
Loki got
jumping
completely
off,
wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It was a bright sunny day when he jumped.
Yeah.
But they land, and so law enforcement thinks he's still on the plane.
With a live bomb, by the way.
with a
Yes.
bomb.
Yeah.
That's why they
Yeah, don't
approach
forget about the
cautiously.
bomb.
Yeah, they think the bomb's still there. So the captain actually comes out and says, "Hey, he's not here." So they jump on the plane. They do a clean sweep.
Yeah.
Figure out he's not there. The bomb's not there. So okay, now what do we do?
Yeah. Then they did start investigating. They found 66 unidentified fingerprints aboard the airliner. They found Cooper's black clip-on tie, his tie clip. some
Isn't that
ci-
so cool? He just took off the tie. He's like,
Yeah. He's like, I'm not going to fly with
Of
him.
all the things he left,
Yeah.
Yes.
Cigarette butts
8
and
cigarette butts.
and two
Smoked
of the
a
4
lot.
parachutes. And they also found the opened parachute with the shroud lines cut as
So
well.
it's interesting because you think, oh, he jumped off the plane. He has a parachute. He's good, right? He's escaped. This is the night before Thanksgiving, Washington State. It was 20 degrees Fahrenheit. He jumped at 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
With no like breathing apparatus.
No helmet?
No helmet.
He's wearing a loafers.
Yeah, and a suit with no tie.
And so it's very difficult for anyone to survive that. And he's landing in the forested area, maybe near Mount St. Helens.
So what they said was, in the initial guesstimates of where he landed, they said he was over southwestern Washington, maybe near the southernmost outreach of Mount St. Helens. But then, after further investigation, they realized the landing zone was that original landing zone was inaccurate and was probably near the drainage area of the Washougal River. They actually spent so much time searching this one area, and then they kind of reevaluated.
And I think they were searching for his body and for the parachute.
They
were looking for a hole in the ground because I think they suspected him to be dead.
They searched on foot. They searched. They did an aerial thing, kind of flew over the forest area.
Yeah,
and then they also did. They
submarine.
dragged Lake Merwin.
Yep.
Down at the bottom of the lake there, just to see if anything was in there. Nothing.
Yeah. So you have this guy who's disappeared.
Yeah.
Nobody knows where he went. I mean, you would think within a day
it's
or
like
two.
He ditched his parachute or anything like that.
He's got $200,000 to spend.
Yeah. Well, and you think, like Ken said, you think there's a hole in the ground somewhere.
Yeah.
And he's just laying in it, right?
Yeah.
So who knows what's going on now? I mean, it's just complete bedlam. And as far as the FBI is concerned, he died on impact.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that.
By the way, if there's a conspiracy part of the story, I think it involves the FBI.
Yeah.
Because local authorities are like, oh, we're going to solve this. The FBI kind of got in everyone's way.
Well, they
throughout.
I'm assuming they got really annoyed with all the people talking about DB Cooper and giving him tips.
Well, because people just started volunteering, obviously, to search for him and then search for the money. Because if we want to talk about the reward, there was that involved too.
They said 15% of the ransom would be given to someone who came.
Some women were searching the area and they found a skeleton in an abandoned structure. Yep. It's a very sad story, but turned out to be a teenage girl who'd been abducted and murdered several weeks before.
Yeah,
and no one knew where she was. But because they were looking for Dan Cooper, they found her.
Dan, are you on a Dan basis with him now?
Well, Juice and Dan, it's fine.
But Kent, Juice, and Zack, if the cigarette butts were left on the plane, wouldn't modern science be able to extrapolate some DNA from those cigarette butts?
Conspiracy.
The cigarette butts are gone.
Disappeared.
Yeah. They disappeared from evidence. They don't know where they are. And I'm like, you had 8 cigarette butts and you lost all of them?
Right.
Yeah. Not only that, but the cup that he drank the bourbon from, they actually picked it up and mixed it in with all the other cups from all the other passengers. So not only that...
those are good flight attendants right there. That's very prompt service.
Hey, when you're under duress, anything can happen.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So they lose that.
They lost that.
Anything that really has any DNA on it, except for the tie, is now gone.
Yeah. And some people, by the way, say that the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens may have covered up where he was. Like this is 1971, so obviously this is like 9 years after that. But still... it could be there was an area where he was, and there was that, DB Cooper shaped hole in the ground.
Feels like an excuse.
But I don't know. That was a big eruption.
Yeah, there was a big eruption. So much so, I talked to my parents about that. They, here in Utah, ash would fall from the sky.
Wow.
I mean, it's just crazy to think about that.
Yeah. The U.S. Attorney General, they released the serial numbers of all the money, and they're like, just keep an eye out for it. Just keep an eye for any money.
Do you think that was a mistake?
There was some people who actually printed some counterfeit $20 bills and put the serial numbers on there, and they got $30,000 from a Newsweek reporter because they said the information had proof of the bills, and it turned out to be a fake.
I mean, that's the thing is, like, anytime they're talking about a crime that someone got away with, other people are going to get the inspiration.
Yeah.
And there were a ton of copycats in the years following.
Yeah. But I want to talk about one more thing that I found interesting. So this is 1971 was when this all happened.
Yeah.
7 years later, in 1978, a hunter... who was near a logging road near Castle Rock, which is in the basic flight path of 307, found a placard printed with instructions for lowering the aft stairs of a 727, which once again, people flocked to the area and all started searching, but nothing.
Gold rush.
Yeah. Because anytime anyone gets any sort of evidence like this might be where DB Cooper landed, everyone flocks there and starts searching. Goes crazy.
Digging holes, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about an 8-year-old boy, shall we?
Yeah. So you got Mr. Brian Ingram.
Yes.
And him and his father in February of 1980, are on a beach in just outside of Vancouver, Washington.
Right on the Columbia River there.
Exactly. And this is miles away from what their supposed drop zone they think he landed. And as they're digging and building a fire, this Brian Ingram finds money hidden in the sand.
Like as he's raking it, it kind of comes up.
Yeah,
like $5,800, right?
Yeah, $5,800.
Yeah, $5,800.
All 20s.
Disintegrated bills. Like these are in poor shape.
Yeah, it looks like these have been here for a while.
Do you think they'd been washed up and then ended up in the sand?
I don't think they did.
Do you think he buried them on purpose?
Somebody deliberately buried them there.
Except they did have the Army Corps engineers investigate it, and they said they had been deposited by river action rather than being deliberately buried.
That's what they say. But another interesting thing is the Army Corps of Engineers also dredged that river in 1974.
And didn't find anything.
There wasn't anything there. So when they found the money, they actually dug deeper to see if they could find more money, and they found where they dredged. So the money was actually on top of where the dredging was that the Army Corps of Engineers did in 1974.
Well, and it's also weird because the bills are disintegrated, but they're still some were still bundled in the rubber bands.
Yeah.
You'd think that would have disintegrated longer before that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just weird because I don't think he needed to throw anyone off its trail because it had been nearly 10 years.
Yeah.
But why are they there?
Yeah.
That's the big question.
Yeah.
And so they did this whole... I'm not getting into the science of it, but one thing I found fascinating is the fact that they said, due to science, I'm just going to put that in quotes there because I can't explain it, but they said they were not submerged in the river or buried dry at the time of the hijacking in 1971. So if it's not buried in the ground and if it's not in the water, where were they during that time? In fact, they did studies and said the money, based on what was in there, the diatoms that were in there, they said it was in the spring, so the money entered the water at least several months after the hijacking. So for some reason, the money wasn't in the water for a couple months, and then it got in the water. But I don't know. It's confusing to me. I don't understand how the money got there.
Well, that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah.
How do you explain it? The more you get into it, the more you get more involved in the Cooper Vortex.
Yeah.
The more it becomes more interesting and being like.
So let's go a little bit deeper than juice. We talk a lot about comic books and comic book movies here. What is a link of comic books to D.B. Cooper?
So we have this French Canadian type comic book, and it's actually called The Adventures of Dan Cooper.
Dun, dun, dun.
Who is a gentleman who is actually in the Royal Canadian Air Force, and he actually jumps from airplanes.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting that is this where DB or Dan Cooper gets his
I think
moniker,
100%.
Right? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean...
It's not like Dan Cooper's an uncommon name. You know?
Well, that's the thing, though. I think the name was chosen, written down when he bought the ticket, Dan Cooper. Like an alias. Like when you book a hotel and you're a celebrity, I'm going to write Dan Cooper.
You're going to write Bruce Wayne.
I'll definitely write Bruce Wayne. They're like, oh, he's a real person. But no, I think whoever is the real Dan Cooper, wrote Dan Cooper because of what this comic book series
It's an
was.
interesting connection because he does do parachuting. He's kind of this super, not spy, but super action.
He's like a
type
1940s
He's
basic
kinda
American
like a
hero.
James Bond in
Canadian.
some regard.
Yes.
Yeah, like a French Canadian
Yes.
James Bond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's got
Feels
all
less
sorts
intimidating.
but he's got all these connections,
Super polite.
which is interesting because of all the comic books that he probably could have chosen, and it could have been that one. We don't know for sure.
Sure.
But it's an interesting link. And then when we talked about the negotiable American currency that he talks about, he could have been a foreigner or a Canadian.
Yeah, because I was going to say these comics were never translated into English, as far as I know. So he had to have spoken French, or at least Canadian French.
I'm just disappointed it wasn't Asterix or Tintin.
Asterix,
Yeah.
Tintin, yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting because then that implies maybe he was Canadian. Like, there's all these things kind of pointing around to different people. They did say they did some tests on the tie, and they did find a partial DNA profile on the tie, but they couldn't say it's his.
He
They're just
sounds
saying
like
he's
he
one
was
of them.
polite on the airplane.
He could have been Canadian. Oh, yeah.
Should have been for your Canadian show.
But they also found rare earth minerals like titanium in his tie as well, which leads to a possibility maybe. And there wasn't a lot of titanium like flying around in the 70s.
Factories,
as crazy as the 70s was.
Yeah.
It was factory, specifically the Boeing factory.
Yes.
So he may have worked for an airline, Boeing specifically.
And he knew a lot about Boeing airplanes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because these were Boeing airplanes.
So for 45 years, the FBI was investigating. And then in 2016, they said, we're closing the case. This is no longer an active investigation. Just because I think they were sick of, honestly, all the tips they were getting.
Well, and what happened around 2016 is I think it was History Channel.
Yeah.
They started running a documentary about D.B. Cooper. And I think the FBI is like, just cut it out. Like, we're not going to find this guy. It's been too long. Just no one cares
all
anymore.
the evidence is being released to the public now. A lot of pages are already out there. You can start digging already. Like you said earlier, Jake, the FBI's best guess, Cooper did not survive the jump. That's that they're saying. They're saying it was raining, it was cold, the landing area is wilderness. He didn't really know where he was going or what he was doing, and the ransom money just hasn't turned up. Only $5,800. Oh, by the way, fun find, by the way. So little Brian was his name? Brian Ingram? Is that his name?
Yeah.
He sold 15 bills at auction in 2008 for $37,000.
Yeah. You can still get them on eBay.
They're out there, the Cooper bills?
Yeah, you can buy them. They're thousands of dollars, but
Right.
you can still get them if you want them.
I saw in a documentary.
I'll use Kent's card.
There's a right. There's a recent documentary on Netflix. It's a 4-episode series.
Yeah.
It's just okay.
It's okay.
I agree.
Right. If you want kind of a very surface level history, you can watch the first episode, and then you get kind of
That's it. Because they get really hyper focused on one suspect that we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But they showed the Cooper convention.
Yeah.
Where people will be like, I bought a bill, and they'll have it in like their casing and everything like that. People are so into this.
Yeah.
I mean, there's geeks for everything, right? And there's definitely a fandom for DB
Well,
Cooper.
and like you said earlier, they had to change kind of the way the commercial aviation works, like with metal detectors and baggage searches, and even paying for flights the same day raises a red flag now because of DB Cooper. And aircrafts actually got modified. They came up with something called a Cooper vane.
Yep.
And it's a little latch, essentially, that prevents the stairs from being lowered while in flight. There's like a pressure thing of the air knocking it back, specifically because of DB Cooper. And he hasn't left the public eye, or I guess public mind, since. He pops up all the time. We were talking about it before the show, but in TV shows like Prison Break and The Blacklist and News Radio and Renegade and Leverage, Numbers, 30 Rock, Loki, they all have a DB Cooper reference or connection. And the movie, like Without a Paddle, not a great movie.
No.
But it's all about
finding his
searching
money.
for the money of DB Cooper, because it's still out there somewhere.
And who would have known? Burt Reynolds, DB Cooper. Right?
I know. Well, I think we all kind of knew that. So, but we wanted to kind of bring it back real quick to this point of suspects, because there are thousands of people who have either been called DB Cooper or have said themselves they are DB Cooper.
It seems like most of them, it's like a drunk family member was mad at their uncle or their cousin. It was like, I'm going to say you're DB Cooper.
It does. Or it's like, hey, they disappeared for like 3 days and then they came home. And so I think they're DB Cooper.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of these
They
are.
probably did have a southern accent, too.
Yeah, they probably did.
In Washington.
Yeah.
So but the things we know about these suspects, at least this is the kind of things that point to different people, is that they're familiar with the Seattle area. They knew Tacoma from the air is what they mentioned. But also one thing that DB Cooper mentioned is he said that the McCord Air Force Base was approximately 20 minutes drive from the Seattle Tacoma Airport. So he knew where this Air Force Base was, which most people wouldn't be able to say, oh, that's 20 minutes away. Like, why would you use that as a point of reference? We talked about Dan Cooper, the French-Canadian comic. And then we talked about he knew things about airplanes and airlines. He knew a lot of things, but maybe not. He wasn't completely in the know, because we mentioned he picked the different parachute. So there's a lot of reasons it could point to different people.
Well, the FBI is looking for military experience, skydiving, parachuting, everything that would lead to this guy.
Yeah. And they put a lot through the ringer. I'll bring up one real quick, my first one.
Yeah.
Kenneth Peter Christensen, born 1926, died in 1994. And this was kind of funny because, kind of like what Kent said, he was watching a documentary in 2003, and as he was watching it, he became convinced that his brother Lyle was DB Cooper. His brother Lyle, who passed away about a decade before. So all of a sudden he's watched a documentary, he's like, I think that's my brother.
Well, he did serve in the Army, and he's a paratrooper, right?
He was a paratrooper in the
Yeah.
Army. He was a mechanic for Northwest Orient, the airline that DB Cooper the hijacked. He was also a flight attendant, and he was a purser, which is a chief flight attendant, based in Seattle. Which to me, that's kind of like, that's the level of knowledge we're going for. He's not like an experienced, knows everything about planes and everything about parachutes.
He was also stationed in the Aleutian Islands in Alaska for 4 years, where
right.
Northwest Orient would, when they do their transit or trans-Pacific flights to Asia, they would stop there for refueling. So he knew exactly about how this type of plane worked when it came to refueling and how the aft stairs would work and that type of thing. So that's also another interesting tidbit.
Well, and maybe the most, in my mind, condemning bit of evidence is that the flight attendant, Schaffner, she told a reporter that the photos of Chris Jansen, because remember, this is like, 2003.
Yeah.
The photos of him fit her memory of the hijacker's appearance more closely than any other suspect she'd looked at. But keep in mind, this is also 2003 when the hijacking occurred in 1971, and eyewitnesses' memory gets a little fuzzy after that point.
Explain to me what they did with the statute of limitations, right? Because generally he could not be held responsible for something, even if he came out and said, "Yeah, I'm DB Cooper," whoever he is.
Yeah. The statute of limitations went up in, I believe it was 2006, I think.
Which is weird, though, from 71 to 2006. So, because there's something to do with aviation, right? Because it was that kind of high-level crime that
Sky
they could
law.
still... Yeah, this is Sky Law. But, so they actually could hold him someone responsible still.
Yeah.
Even though it just becomes legend at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, this guy's probably, if he is alive,
Sure.
then he's probably at some old folks' rest home or, or just, bit the bullet from some other thing.
But the
maybe
reason,
cancer
and that's the thing, is
type
the
of
reason the FBI kind of ruled him out is because he was shorter than DB Cooper, was reportedly. He was 5'8". He was 150 pounds, so he was thinner than DB Cooper, and he had lighter skin than DB Cooper. Which I'm like, he could have worn lifts and padding and makeup. Like, this guy, I read this and I'm like, I think Lyle might have a point. It could have been his brother Kenneth. So Kenneth Peter Christensen is probably my prime suspect.
Really?
I agree with you. I think he's one of the prime ones. And it's interesting, too, because later on, they actually found a photo of him that was taken by a roommate of his where he walked in with a white bag and an attaché case and had a...
What?
Had a...
This sounds like a
trench
true
coat
story.
on. No, it's true. They actually have the photograph, and it actually was in a photo album behind another photo. And this
And he
was
was
like
the exact
this
same
was like
age.
this was like 3 weeks after the hijacking.
Why
as far
have
as
they not? Why did they not arrest this guy?
Well, obviously he's
Well, but back then he lived till 94.
he wasn't a prime suspect until at least the early 2000s.
I guess until
And
his brother pointed it out.
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Everyone else was like, So that's another interesting.
Okay, Jake, do you have another suspect?
Oh yeah, one of my favorites is Richard McCoy Jr.
Yeah.
He was one of the famous most copycats of DB Cooper.
Yeah, because he copycat. He did kind of the same
Literally
thing.
did almost the same thing. So this guy jumps on a plane from New Jersey to fly to L.A. Well, while they're in the air between New Jersey, he does the same thing. He passes a note, says, "I want $500,000." And
For
he has-
inflation, because it was a year later. So, yeah.
yeah, you got to have some money, right? He does the same thing. I want to go up at a certain amount. He actually goes up to 15,000 feet, if I remember right, and has the same type of plane, aft stairs, and does the same thing, which is interesting because he actually jumps out over Provo, Utah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because he was flying. He was flying to Colorado, was it?
Yeah, they stopped in Denver to refuel.
That's right.
So they could go to L.A.
Yeah.
And he jumps out over Provo, Utah.
Yeah.
So didn't know there was a Utah connection to DB Cooper, which is interesting because this guy actually was a Mormon.
Yeah.
I mean,
And he served in the Utah National Guard, too.
He went to BYU.
He did?
He went to BYU.
You can't trust him.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Just needs the money because tuition's so expensive, right? Went
It's
to
those
BYU
rules.
and taught Sunday school in his local ward. So
Oh, wow.
this is an interesting fellow, and he actually jumps out, survives. This is why they think DB Cooper may have survived because he actually was higher and actually survives, and lands in a field, gets back to his home. What's interesting is he tells a friend of his before he does this what he's going to do. And this friend, as soon as he hears about it, says, "Oh, I know who that is." Calls the FBI, turns him in.
Yeah.
Some friend. He was probably a Utah fan.
Yeah. So the FBI catches up with him at his house. He's there with his wife, 2 kids. They find the money in the closet and take him in, and he's arrested for hijacking.
But then, 2 years later, the guy escapes from the Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary. And
That's pretty cool.
By
Yeah.
crashing a garbage truck through the gate. And then they track him down. It kind of has a sad ending.
Yeah.
Because they track him down 3 minutes later in Virginia Beach, and he's killed in a shootout with FBI agents.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that FBI agent that did shoot him came out later and said, "I shot DB Cooper."
Oh, and he knew it.
yeah.
yeah.
He was convinced that Richard
but the
McCoy Jr. was.
FBI
But
said no.
there's credible evidence that he was in Las Vegas on the day of the Portland hijacking, and that he was at Utah the day after having Thanksgiving dinner with his family. You can't be in Utah and Seattle at the same time.
Yeah. So, but hey, it's all circumstantial, right?
Sure.
I mean,
I think every one of these suspects is circumstantial,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Well, obviously, because we don't know who it is.
yeah.
All right, so I want to talk about Barbara Dayton. Why? Barbara Dayton, born 1926, died 2002, born Robert Dayton, and served as a merchant marine in the Army during World War II. She underwent gender reassignment surgery in 1969. Now, remember, that's 2 years before the hijacking. She actually came forward and said, "I am DB Cooper." Right? She said, "I did the hijacking. I presented myself as a man in order to get back at the airline industry and the FAA, who prevented me from becoming an airplane pilot. So out of anger that she didn't get a job, for some reason, she wanted to be held responsible for it. But she later recanted the claim when she realized that charges could still be brought.
Yeah, it's like once she realized she could get in trouble, she's like,
Convenient.
We're good, right? We're good?
I'm
and they're
good.
like, no, you're going to go to jail. And obviously, she didn't match the description whatsoever.
No. And there's no evidence actually linking her to the crime.
Right.
I'm going to bring up one pretty popular on the Netflix documentary. It's the one they brought up is
Oh, yeah.
Robert Rackstraw.
Yeah.
He was born in 1943 and he actually passed away in 2019. He's a retired pilot and ex-convict who served on Army helicopter crew and he was in the Vietnam War. And he had a really kind of weird history where one time he was flying a plane and then called in that he was going to crash. He didn't crash. He landed the plane somewhere and started repainting it and tried to fake his death, essentially fake a plane crash. He may have killed his father-in-law.
Yeah, he was acquitted for murder.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The 70s were a rough time for this dude.
70s,
For everyone.
man. Yeah. But then he actually, one of the reasons they connected to him is because, he obviously has a criminal history, but also his physical resemblance was very close to Cooper. And he has the parachute training and the criminal record. But, he was only 28 in 1971. Yeah. So he was
Granted,
much younger.
though, remember, like, back then, a 20-year-old could look 50.
At least in the movies, yeah.
Right.
Those high school kids are at least 30.
Yeah, Dawson's Creek.
And no direct involvement can be found. I
actually felt really bad for the guy in the documentary series.
Here's the thing. He's kind of a jerk. Like, you watch those interviews and they're like, are you DB Cooper? And he's like, maybe I am.
He's playing
Maybe
coy.
I'm not.
I think it's for the money.
Yeah. But they harass him on the Netflix documentary. These documentary makers are like harassing him. I'm like, leave the guy alone. Like,
oh, for sure.
If he's flying straight now, just leave him alone.
Well, I think a lot of these suspects, some of them enjoyed being associated with DB Cooper.
Right.
Well,
because
it's cool.
Oh, yeah, because a lot of people think DB Cooper is a hero. Like, he stuck
like a
it to
folk
the
hero.
man.
Yeah.
He stuck it to the man.
And it didn't hurt anybody.
I mean, what's a better scenario, right?
Yeah.
Granted, he threatened to blow up a plane.
Scared a couple flight attendants, the pilots, but
as far as we know, it was a dud. So
I feel like the real DB Cooper, the real Dan Cooper, whatever his name is, would never tell anyone because the legend is too good. I feel like you would never want to tell someone, not even deathbed confession.
At some point, you'd want to like pull that ripcord, pun intended, and be like, I am DB Cooper. I am Spartacus.
But everyone had done it at that point. Who's going to believe it?
I don't know.
I think the legend is better than finding out who the person actually is.
He'd have to pull out like the money with it and be like, I'm DB Cooper.
Sure.
Ha ha.
Yeah, good luck finding the money.
Yeah. By the way, I found out something. If you rearrange the letters.
Oh, no.
In Dan Cooper, because remember, he's not DB Cooper, he's Dan Cooper.
Right.
You get Draco? Nope. So obviously,
not.
DB Cooper is James Potter, Harry Potter's father, who would fit the profile.
Why would James Potter say that to Draco? I mean, the timeline doesn't seem to fit.
He's saying Draco nope because he knows one day Lucius Malfoy is going to have a kid named Draco, and he's like, Draco, nope.
It's not Lucius?
No, it's not Lucius because he doesn't want to be Draco. He doesn't want his son to be Draco. Therefore, James Potter is
something he says. Draco, nope.
Hey, we brought it back to Harry Potter before I wanted to do it again.
What's interesting is he could have actually got the money, started his own internet site, and just called it IMDb.
He probably did. DB Cooper is hiding in IMDb. I knew it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theory right there.
Sure.
Just opinion.
Any other suspects you guys want to bring up?
There's a few other ones, but none of them those are the main ones.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, those are the ones that get the most pub. They're the ones that kind of have
it's hard to
more.
say because a lot of people, just like we said, claim to be it. Like there's this guy named Walter Recca. He died in 2014. He was a military paratrooper, intelligence operative. And after his death, he had these, I think it was 6 recorded phone calls with his friend where he confessed everything to the whole crime. It said, after my death, you can give these to the cops, but not until I die.
Yeah.
Well, there was like a surge of copycats. Like there were 15 hijackings, I think, in 1972 trying to do the same basic thing. None of them were successful.
Yeah. And that just made airports have even more security.
Of
course.
I mean,
and this isn't a suspect. It's a copycat I want to bring up. Do you guys know Glenn K. Tripp?
I've heard of him. Yeah.
So Glenn Tripp, he hijacked Northwest Flight 608 at the Seattle-Tacoma airport. So same airline, same basic area. He demanded $600,000, 2 parachutes, and the assassination of his boss. So he's got a kind of, he's like, kind of
buried the lead there.
Yeah. But then here's my favorite part, though.
Sure.
My favorite part is this. A flight attendant actually slipped some Valium into his drink and gave it to him. And so there was a 10-hour standoff, so he wasn't thinking clearly, or he just got frustrated. But he reduced his demands after the 10-hour standoff to 3 cheeseburgers and a vehicle to escape, a ground vehicle to escape.
Valium gives you the munchies.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. But then, so he was quickly apprehended at that time. And then later, he tried to hijack the same flight on January 21st. And he ended up, this time he demanded to be flown to Afghanistan. And sadly, when he was landed in Portland, he was actually shot and killed.
Sure.
But this guy is so weird where he's like, give me $600,000 or 3 cheeseburgers, and I'm going to try this again. So Glenn Tripp.
But where were they from? That's what I want to know.
3 cheeseburgers?
Yeah.
What 3 cheeseburgers are worth $600,000 to you?
I get one of each. Do a little taste test there.
Yeah?
Burger King, Wendy's,
Tier 1, 2, 3
McDonald's.
sort of thing?
Yeah.
You're thinking Baconsale.
Baconsale hijacking? Baconsale hijacking? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now juice.
Juice.
It's going to keep going.
Go for it.
Joel kind of gave me a present in this episode, but not yet. Not yet. We're going to end.
A present. This counts as one of yours.
No, it does not. We're going to end with the gift, right? We're going to do some movie pitches for DB Cooper.
Okay.
But before we get to that, I just kind of want to get our takes on this. We talked about the mystery, him disappearing, how difficult it would have been to survive. I want to know, did he survive?
So what do we think happened? What do we think actually
think happened?
Yeah, I think he survived. I think he made it out. Granted, the conditions weren't great, but I think he made it. I mean, how do you explain the money that the 8-year-old boy found?
I have a little
9 years later. What's your explanation?
I don't think he survived. Okay, so let me put this in these terms. I think he landed, but I think he got severely injured and then exposure to the elements, and he did not survive getting out of the forest where he was at. I think
his bones are there somewhere.
I think he may have busted a leg. I think he may have broken something, like just not. He'd have been in bad shape when he landed, and then he couldn't get out, and he passed away somewhere in the wilderness, and the money's just out there somewhere. And I do think, though, the case was open somehow, and animals maybe got into it.
Like a bobcat?
Yeah, like a smart cougar or Bigfoot.
Yeah, Bigfoot.
there is a movie.
It's up in the Northwest.
There's a movie, Sasquatch versus DB Cooper.
No,
Stop it right now.
Yeah, there is.
DB Cooper Sasquatch.
Are you serious? Is this a Sci-Fi Channel original?
Guys,
I'm not sure,
guys,
but-
Sasquatch is DB Cooper. He's covered in hair.
He's just been out there the whole time.
Yeah, the whole time. No, but that's what I think. I think because where did the rest of the money go? Why did he never spend it?
But
why did he never confess?
Joel, you're wrong, though. And I'm going to tell you why you're 100% wrong. Actually, I have no idea. But everything about this was so organized.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Including the fact that I think someone found part of a parachute strap 20 years later.
But
right?
that was never directly linked to him.
Exactly. No one really found anything. There was some money found. Everything was so organized. And he disappeared. And I think he had it planned from the beginning. He had to know the weather conditions would be bad that night, and everyone would think that he died. Because I think he was so experienced, he knew exactly what he was doing from beginning to end.
I think he had somebody helping him. When he jumped out, I'm sure somebody was waiting down below somewhere.
He did wait 13 minutes to jump.
Yep.
You know, in Top Gun Maverick, when Tom Cruise survived the Mach 10 flight, when the ship exploded.
Spoiler alert for the first 5 minutes.
He shouldn't have survived. But that's like straight up DB Cooper right there.
You couldn't use
Somehow,
Batman.
He survived.
And I'm sure he walked into some cafe and said, I need a drink of water, right?
Actually, some cops believe he did.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so, I don't know. I can go either way, but just...
Like, I don't think he's alive now, right?
No, the truth is, if he were alive, he'd be in his 90s.
Yes. Yeah.
And who knows if he's still alive. So it's like, even if he did survive and was out there, would he still be alive today?
But to know... years, decades later.
This is definitely one of the laser discs I'm checking out when I get to heaven.
This is why he's a legend.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things you could go back and forth. We could debate this for hours.
Yeah. But we're not going
just
to.
not going to get some.
But we're not going to because, like I said.
Zach, having heard this story for the first time.
Yeah.
Is he alive?
No.
I mean, not now. Did he survive?
Did he survive? Yeah. He did. It wasn't about the money.
I don't think so either.
It was about doing it.
Yes. You think
the money
so?
didn't matter.
You think the money didn't matter?
I think it was in your face.
This is
Stick it to the man.
an adrenaline junkie. This is a control freak. This is a planner. He just wanted to do it.
But why $200,000? That seems like a specific amount. You know what I mean? Like
because that's
why not $100,000?
It's noteworthy. It's newsworthy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's a nice round number.
It's over $1 million at this
30
point.
years.
Yeah.
He's like, I bet you with inflation that's going to be $1 million. And
Well, they talked about this on a podcast in 2022.
Guys, what if he's listening right now? What's up, Dan? But no, I decided to put a little Baconsale spin on this here at the end.
Yeah.
And I gave Kent. I let Kent redeem one of his pitch meetings.
No, you did not. This is a gift.
How many do you have left?
I still have one.
This counts.
No, it doesn't.
But what we're going to do is we're going to pitch our ideas for a D.B. Cooper movie. Not the whole thing, because you know the story. We've now gone through the entire story. But more the ending of the story. Where does the story go?
So wait, do we have to do like a sympathetic live-action Disney villain movie about DB?
Yeah, we're getting his
DB Cooper?
backstory and learn that he was wronged. And so all the bad is forgiven.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right, I love movie pitches so much. I didn't have enough time because I was so busy just reading articles about D.B. Cooper, watching documentaries this week. And so, honestly, the pitch became secondary because I wanted to find out who he is. But let's talk about a fictionalized version because, yes, I picture like an Oscar-winning type movie.
Okay.
Who is D.B. Cooper? It's a question that police, the FBI, and conspiracy theorists have wondered about for decades. It's time to see who the suspects are and how they could have possibly pulled off the only aviation hijacking in America's history. Steven Spielberg presents D.B. Cooper dropping this Thanksgiving. Now,
I can see the poster now.
This is where it gets a little complicated, right? And I chose Steven Spielberg. He's like an obvious director. I think he needs a win. Like he hasn't had like a really great movie in a really long time.
You guys.
I know. Yes.
What if Steven Spielberg is D.B. Cooper?
He funded his first movie with the $200,000.
He funded Duel. With that $200,000.
Who would pay for
when
that?
did Duel come out? Was that 72?
So let's get to the twist because my pitches always need a twist.
It's 71. It's all connected.
Stop it. It is not really.
Oh no, this happened before the hijacking.
Okay.
It was November 20th.
Steven Spielberg is the director. He's compiled this entire movie because 6 unique directors joined to depict their vision of several unique suspects. Each director presents the background of each person of interest. So this is kind of like they're interviewing FBI agents or eyewitnesses or whatever, and they're like, tell us who you think it is. And then a director will depict what happens in this person's background during the hijacking and after the hijacking. And so basically like 6 auteurs are basically trying to convince the audience, and this is like an anthology movie, but packed into one. So everyone has about 20 minutes to tell their story, and granted, there will be some unique splicing and editing because it will start off with a hijacking and then stop at a certain point, and then it will tell someone's story.
And it'll go to the Tarantino part.
Exactly.
And then it'll go into the Wes Anderson part.
So the directors of this one are Brad Bird. He'll be directing the Dan Cooper comic book movie, which will be spliced throughout the movie.
Okay.
Dan Cooper will be voiced by John Hamm because, I mean, come on. Super handsome.
Yeah.
Catherine Bigelow, who directed Point Break, I think is very applicable here. Great director.
And nothing else.
Oh, stop that right now.
So Dan Cooper's like, hey, give me that money back when you get back. He's not coming back. Tie off, jump out the plane.
Her D.B. Cooper is Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Of course.
Fits the age and the look and everything like that.
They're casting all the handsome men.
He's a little too handsome, but you know.
Is he 40?
David Fincher, who's not David Lynch, he'll jump in to direct Edward Norton as D.B. Cooper.
Okay.
Taylor Sheridan, he'll direct Dan Stevens from Downton Abbey.
Yeah.
And M. Night Shyamalan will join the fold, and he'll direct Jamie Bell, Billy Elliot himself. But then it's Steven Spielberg will basically compile these, edit them together, be the final say, and of course it's going to end on some sort of twist. This movie will never tell you who D.B. Cooper is.
Or kind
try
of put
to
all the
explain.
stories out there and be like,
But it's going to be like a
tell.
big true crime movie where you say, I like that person's story, or this one's more convincing, and then end it with a mystery. Maybe D.B. Cooper kind of knowing that all these stories are being told and
what if
knowing the
D.B.
truth.
Cooper is the friends we made along the way?
Oh, I love that so much. That's so tender. All right, so that's my pitch.
That's good.
Yeah.
So it's basically going to tell all the suspects we
basically,
talked about.
It's 6 different styles.
But the
in
suspects
one
we
movie.
talked about, and telling all their stories,
Totally.
and be like, you
military history.
pick. And at the end, Steven Spielberg comes and goes, you decide.
And every director will, like, imagine M. Night Shyamalan telling the story of the hijacking compared to, like, a Tarantino, for example.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really fun to see.
I think so too. I'd watch that movie.
All right.
Greenlit.
Is it like a
Thank you.
vantage point type?
Yeah,
type
actually,
deal?
Yeah,
totally.
where it
yes.
kind of rewinds and tells the story again from a different point.
And
yeah.
then you can just laugh when one starts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like it.
precisely.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Juice, you're next.
Jake,
Well, I
Cooler
don't
King
have
Swallow?
quite the nice pitch like Kent has. I look at it as a D.B. Cooper is not necessarily somebody who's just out to get some money, but there's a reason why he has the money or why he's trying to get the money.
Okay.
He's a former CIA agent where his family's been kidnapped by Russian loyalists. And it's got to
What?
be able to buy them back. And this is the best way without killing anybody to be able
He
to
didn't
get
harm
that.
anybody. That's true.
Yeah.
He's not going to get caught. he's either going to die or he's not going to get caught.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how I kind of framed it.
All right, Liam Neeson
like it.
as DB Cooper.
Yeah, you cast an actor,
that kind of
director.
movie.
I had a couple people. I had
I have a very
I had maybe
particular set of
Robert
sunglasses.
Pattinson,
Robert Pattinson.
or Clark
DB
Gregg.
Clark Gregg. I get it.
Who's
He
Clark
actually,
Gregg?
from
Agent Coulson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a little bit shorter, but
Wait,
And
how,
older as
how
well.
tall
Yeah.
is Robert Pattinson? He seems like he's
6'1".
There's no way of knowing.
He's
So-
too tall.
Yeah, but hey, you can hide it
And
when
all
you're in an
things
airplane, right?
Who's going to forget our Pat's face? Let's be honest.
I tried to. No, and I,
So handsome.
That's the thing about when they put that in the Loki movie. I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, Tom Hiddleston. He kind of looks like DB Cooper.
kinda does.
That was kind of funny in that way.
Yeah, but anyway, so so he's got to get back, and part of the fun part about the movie is once he jumps out of the plane, now he's got to figure out, okay, now I'm in the middle of the wilderness. How do I get out of here?
Right.
He didn't.
You know, it's almost kind of like a
He got eaten by that
kind of like a
revenant bear.
revenant. Yep.
Yeah, he got eaten by
Yep.
the Revenant Bear.
Yep.
That's
Gotta
what
get out
happened
of
to
there.
DB Cooper.
So it's all that combined together, and of course,
I love it.
Happy ending.
Leonardo DiCaprio might be able to pull off.
You got
DB Cooper.
to put the Russians in there somewhere. Right?
Yeah.
It's like that Owen Wilson movie.
Wow, which one?
Oh, Behind Enemy Lines?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun.
Behind enemy lines.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
A little
Okay.
bit more military.
So I kind of cheated on this one in that I didn't really go with a movie, but just hear me out.
You went with the Netflix miniseries.
You'd think that creating an internationally famous advertisement for Coca-Cola in 1971 would have finally brought Don Draper peace. But it didn't.
Yes.
The advertising executive still felt unfulfilled, and with his ex-wife Betty's cancer diagnosis, he needs to make sure that Sally, Bobby, and little Jean are taken care of. Don agonizes over how to make amends to his broken family and, frankly, just to feel alive again. While on a business trip to Oregon, Don has a dream of his former boss and mentor, Bert Cooper, telling him it would cost Don $200,000 to fly into heaven. The next morning, Don has an idea. He makes some preparations, takes a taxi to the airport, buys his ticket under the alias Dan Cooper. After all, it's not the first time he's assumed someone else's identity. He hijacks the plane, drinks, smokes, then jumps out of a plane with his money. He eventually makes his way to San Francisco, meets a girl, and convinces her to help him hijack another plane in January of 1972. Don doesn't ask for any ransom this time, but diverts that plane to Cuba, where he plans on exchanging the stolen and presumably marked American currency for gold or nickel. However, Don's womanizing ways gets him in trouble with the woman he brought with him, and she ends up shooting him on a high-rise hotel room balcony in Havana, where Don plummets to his death. And that's how Mad Men should have ended. Opening credits.
The opening credits, he's falling.
Every single time he's falling.
I love it so
and I
much.
thought it's going to be
nice.
exactly that with the music and everything. He's going to fall slow motion, and then it's just going to fade to black, and that's the end of Don Draper and the end of Mad Men.
Can we call it Madman? Madman.
Well, and really, I just pitched a new finale for
Mad
Mad
Men.
Men because
Yeah.
in the finale of Mad Men, which I stopped watching about midway through, but I kept up with the episodes.
Nothing
synopses.
happens, just like the whole show.
Yeah, but then it gets to the end, and like Don Draper's not feeling fulfilled. He's an advertising executive. He's not feeling fulfilled, and then at the end, he comes up with the idea for "I'd like to buy the world a Coke," and that's the ending.
Yeah.
And the show technically ends in November 1970, but that ad aired in I think February of 1971. And so the timing was right. And this isn't just my theory. This was a whole thing. I looked out, and this theory's out there. Like, they thought for the longest time that Don Draper was going to end up being D.B. Cooper.
What?
Because John Hamm kind of looks like D.B. Cooper. He's a handsome man. But then
Super handsome.
the showrunner basically said, no, not going to happen. But the truth is,
They should have ended it that way. It would be so cool.
I mean,
That would've
obviously,
been awesome.
Bert Cooper is his boss and his mentor, and he does have a dream about him in the show a couple times. But Don has military experience. He was in the Korean War, I believe it was. He's middle-aged. He dresses sharp. He's very polite and well-spoken and calm. He drinks a lot. Drinks bourbon.
Oh, definitely.
And then if you've seen the show, I kind of threw in a lot of elements from there that would make him do that. But I actually did pull in an actual hijacking on January 7th of 1972 where a man and a woman hijacked a flight from San Francisco to Cuba. And so there you go.
I love it.
Nice.
I just wanted that ending of the Mad Men falling, and I
Yeah.
never got it. So that's how I did it. So there you go. There's
Wonderful.
my pitch.
Boy, that
Hey,
was
Joel,
a
Don
good
thanks
one.
for
Draper is Dan Cooper. Anyway, there you go. So there's our thoughts on DB Cooper. Do you have thoughts on this? What do you think happened? And have you already been pulled into the to the DB Cooper vortex, or is this your first experience with it? We want to know. Let us know on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you once again, Jake, for bringing this to our attention and for joining us here. Is there
welcome.
anyone you'd like to give a shout out to here at the end of the show?
Oh, yeah, of course, my wife and my 2 daughters. Yeah.
And obviously DB Cooper, who's listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan, we can call him Dan, right?
You know, if 200,000 appears in my bank account tomorrow morning, I won't say anything.
No big deal.
Well, minus the 5,800 that the little boy found on the beach.
Yeah, but it's been accruing interest.
Yeah.
Since the 70s.
yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
Hey, I forgot something. Want to give you guys something?
Oh,
It's kind of
what?
interesting. Yeah, I got a buddy up in Portland that actually sent these to me.
Really?
Once I figured out
Is
what
it
we were
Bigfoot
doing.
tears? Wait, no.
You
can
don't
get
be
those?
so lucky.
Yeah.
They'd probably be in a gallon jug anyways.
Yeah,
but,
they're huge.
So, little DB Cooper action figures.
Oh! Are those little minifigs?
Yeah.
Oh, it's like
yeah.
those
These
little
are
army
so
pilots.
cool.
He's got a
Parachuting DB Cooper action
And-
figure.
Some extra shoots.
Oh, that's awesome.
Awesome.
So
We're
wait, it
playing
says back
this.
here, where could DB be? The infamous DB Cooper disappeared with $200,000 in a parachute November 24th, 1971. Reenact the escape. Find DB Cooper. So basically, it gives you instructions on how to throw him.
Oh,
That's
I love it.
great.
Take it off your
this is
roof,
so good.
your deck, whatever you want.
I'm a fan.
Thanks.
Or, I don't know if this is allowed, but you can throw it out on an airplane if you wanted.
Well,
Only if they depressurize the cabin and the flaps are to 15 degrees.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Jake. And we hope to hear from you, listener. Let us know your thoughts on this unsolved mystery.
But before we go, we want to thank some patrons in a couple of categories, including the I Am the Listener tier, which has Adam and Rachel Crump, Alicia Bass, Andrew in the Dark, Angela Plotz, Braden Winterton, Casey Cummings, Chris Drought, Dave Kelly,
Hey, he's new.
Debbie Foster, Glow Clendaniel, Jake the Cooler King Swallow,
Hey, that's the guy here.
Jennifer Kilkowski, Johnny English the Brick, Lady Terry A. Finley, way less sad, Rocky and Steph, Ryan and Marley, Scott Sprague, Sean Sandquist, Shannon West, and Sir and Madam Hicks.
Thank you.
And then on our Bacon Council, we have, it's just a question mark, so I'm going to say, huh? Allison Gall, Her Royal Highness Jessica Terry, Josh Hansen, Nicole Sitton in the Sin Bin Hale, our favorite couple, the Madsons, Star Wars expert Kyler, Stephen, everyone's favorite Ross, the one, the only Chris Anderson, and Rudy Weenie Beaker.
Swedish in there?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, patrons. We really do appreciate it, and we appreciate you, the listener, for listening to Baconsale. Keep spreading the good word of Baconsale. This may be the episode that draws someone in, right, Kent?
Right.
All those, we mentioned it before, the white women who love true crime.
That was Zack.
Oh.
But he's right.
Yeah. But if you want to find me, you can find me at 76Joel on Twitter. You can find me performing with Quickwits. They perform at the Midvale Performing Arts Center. For more details, go to qwcomedy.com or go to the Quickwits Facebook page.
If you want to find me on Twitter or Instagram, it's at Kenny3DD. If you want to read my movie reviews, it's ShowtimeShowdown.com.
And if you'd like to connect with me, you can do so on Twitter and Instagram at Tumbling Mustard. But more importantly, make sure you're following Bacon Sale. Go ahead and like that Facebook page and visit at Bacon Sale on Twitter and Instagram. While you're doing that, visit tpublic.com/baconsale, where you can get all sorts of very fun merch and become a billboard of Bacon Sale. And you like what's going on here and you want to support us further, visit patreon.com/baconsale, where support starts at just $3 a month. You can get access to all sorts of behind the scenes content and basically an extra episode every week. Patreon.com/baconsale. So until next time, I'm DB Cooper.
Ah! I knew it.
But yeah, I did good. Yeah, good job, kids.
You did good.
You just got to slow it down. That's creepy.
I learned something. This was for me.
That's adorable.
It's a
That's
cute,
cute.
story. That's why we do this show.
Hey, guys.
Hey,
Really excited about the show today.
If there's 2 Jakes in a room, I'm always Juice.
So if I accidentally call you Juice on purpose.
but Juice, we have you here today.
Juice!
DB Cooper, bad A. Let's just put it that way.
Dan Cooper, he's mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
You claim 6 foot. You're actually just 5'10".
I knew you were going to say that.
Did he wear the sunglasses in the Tinder profile? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
He seems to fit the profile of basically every podcast.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to blow you up. And I'm like, prove it. Harry, did you put your name in the top of the file?
Yes. Yeah. Dan, are you on a Dan basis with him now?
Well, Juice and Dan, it's fine.
He went to BYU.
he did.
He went to BYU.
Can't trust him.
Some friend. He was probably a Utah fan. I had a dumb fact that was going to be a funny thing, and now I take it too long. I'm sorry.
It's not funny anymore.
DB Cooper is James Potter, Harry Potter's father, who would fit the profile.
why would James Potter say that to Draco?
Started his own internet site and just called it IMDb.
So Glenn Clayton, Glenn K.
Mary Milford. Sounds like you're trying to speak French.
Glenn Clayton. Give me $600,000 or 3 cheeseburgers. What if
Knowing the
DB
truth.
Cooper is the friends we made along the way?
President 24601, your time is up and your parole's begun. You know what that means?
Yes, it means I'm
free.